what does it mean to get a child-based education? It means instead of having the child adapt to the school, it is the school that adapts to the child. It means you only get to be 3 once, or 6, or 9, or 12 once. And appreciating when these windows of development are gone, they'll be gone forever. It means creating an environment where each work in the classroom is like a stepping stone to the next stage in life, and the teacher is like a guide who lays him in the right direction, while allowing the freedom to explore along this path so that each child can develop into the unique person that they are. Here at DMS, we've created our own materials, activities, videos, and even software to keep child-based education alive in the 21st century. As a template for our program, we use the work of Maria Montessori. Who was Maria Montessori? She was an educator who worked mainly in the first half of the 20th century. Her ideology of a child-based education originates from the philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau's philosophy was a reaction to the blank slate philosophy of John Locke. Locke believed that mentally everyone was born the same, and it was the environment that made each person unique. This ideology was the basis of behaviorism, where humans and animals were seen to have no unique nature, and they could be molded into anything through pleasure and pain. Rousseau's response came as a reaction to the failure of this way of thinking as experienced by the European upper class, a reaction that seems highly relevant to the modern problems of today. If life is just based on maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain, then how is it that people who have everything can feel as if they have nothing? Rousseau's answer is that we're not all born the same, and that we have a unique nature that wants to be realized, and that our minds, rather than being born passive and empty, develop in stages, just as our bodies do. These ideas inspired the first educational reformers. There was Wilhelm von Humboldt, who believed that education should be based on Lernfreiheit and Lehrfreiheit, the freedom to learn and the freedom to teach. His ideas became the basis for the modern university system. Friedrich Froebel was the man who invented kindergarten. He created many practical life activities, as well as manipulative materials to engage children at their developmental level. Maria Montessori took Froebel's work to the next level by using materials to provide what psychologists would call today the scaffolding for tasks that children are not yet able to learn. She gained fame in the early 20th century by proving children could learn how to read and write before they turned 6. Her work continues to be appreciated today for its emphasis on developing the whole child. Montessori didn't want children simply to learn how to obey. She expected them to learn how to manage their time and balance their interests with the broader community. In fact, when a child could work independently, she considered them to be normalized in the classroom. She accomplished this by working with the attention span of each child rather than against it. In traditional schools, children are forced to constantly shift their focus from one arbitrary task to another, and then they're criticized for not being able to pay attention. In a Montessori classroom, each child is given time to focus, so they can complete a natural cycle of work in their day without interruption. This whole child approach towards teaching was developed by other educators, such as John Dewey. John Dewey was the major proponent of child-based education in the United States, which is also called progressive education due to the progressive era of the time. He had a social theory of knowledge called pragmatism, which emphasized learning through experiences driven by solving everyday problems. There were many public schools that adopted Dewey's ideas, and child-based education was the predominant ideology voiced by leading educators until the mid-1950s. So why isn't child-based education used in our public schools today? Progressive education failed for a variety of reasons. When a progressive mayor in New York put Dewey's ideas to work in public schools, his political opponents took advantage of the situation. They said the hands-on learning by doing approach was preparing their children to be factory workers, and that this was class warfare. Also, the most vocal proponent of Dewey's ideology was a man called William Kilpatrick, who was more interested in social project-based learning than on focusing on core skills. In fact, he was a critic of Montessori and her materials, which emphasized these core skills. Unfortunately, Kilpatrick's method was seen as intensifying the problems in public schools, which were producing a wide variety of outcomes without any clear standards. In 1957, when the Soviets launched the satellite Sputnik into space, society was in a panic that the U.S. was falling behind in education, and progressive education was seen to blame. Ever since then, we've been stuck with subject-based education in our country. But what has happened since then? SAT scores have dropped, and science has vindicated the theories behind child-based education. Today, the fact that children develop in stages is the foundational idea of child psychology, and research in neuroscience has shown that our brains have a preferred way of learning. For example, we have three main long-term memory systems: procedural, episodic, and semantic. When a child is working with a Montessori material, they're engaging all three of them. In public schools, information is presented in a rote and disconnected manner. However, our knowledge of the world is stored by association in our semantic memory. We develop our semantic memory through what is called elaborative encoding. That means rather than repeating something over and over again to remember it, we should be encouraging free inquiry so that we connect that information with a network of knowledge that we've already established. Furthermore, the strict linear method of traditional education is at odds with the way we consolidate these memories. Having weekly topics and tests utilizes our short-term memory. However, when we're learning complex tasks, which take multiple attempts to get right, we store multiple models in our short-term memory which provide conflicting information to our brain. This is one of the reasons why it's believed we need what's called spacing, to clear our head of these incorrect models so that we can absorb the correct one into our long-term memory without interference. In a Montessori classroom, children can return to the same material for years if needed. The grouping of multiple ages in a classroom allows for this, as well as for works to be matched to each child's appropriate ability level, or what psychologists call their zone of proximal development. Public schools utilize what's called a tracking system to try to match each student to their ability level, but they're unable to adjust to the uneven strengths and weaknesses of each child, and they impose a class mentality that is harmful to the emotional development of the children. It is for these reasons and many others that our school believes in child-based education, and that we've decided to become an AMS-certified school. Maria Montessori was very concerned with maintaining the quality of her program. She saw how Froebel's ideas became the watered-down version of kindergarten that most children experience today, and how Dewey's ideas got misinterpreted to justify every teaching method under the sun. In fact, during her life, she insisted on personally training every Montessori teacher, and she refused to give the rights for her materials to be sold. Today, there are two main organizations for accrediting Montessori schools. There's AMS, the American Montessori Society, and AMI, Association Montessori International. AMI schools strive to teach as closely as to how Maria Montessori originally taught. AMS schools strive to continue her work, as she did with the work of others. In fact, Montessori never claimed to have developed a method of her own. In her lectures, she continually complained that the English translation of her book was mistitled, because she believed her method was simply the scientific method. As an AMS school that is continually updating and improving its curriculum, we believe that we're continuing the work of Maria Montessori in this true spirit it was intended, which allows us to have the necessary Lernfreiheit and Lehrfreiheit so we can be the best school we can possibly be.